Hi, and welcome to this broadcast. Thank you for joining. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Well, today I'll be talking about the Premium Metrics app and how you can customize it for service optimization. My name is DeNisha Malone, and I'll get into who I am a bit later. Today we'll be talking about the Capacity app, or Premium Capacity, pretty much what it is and how it works, how to use the Metrics app that Microsoft gives you. Microsoft automatically gives you an app that's downloadable in the app source environment. So we'll go through that app, and I'll also show you how to customize that app for optimum use. So at this time, I'm going to ask for Jan to put a poll on the screen. It's going to ask you two questions, and I want you all to answer those questions to let me know who's viewing this webinar.
So within 5 seconds, half of the people voted already. And to wait a bit for the rest of them to wake up. Some of them are from Europe, some from the USA, I see. Yeah. Okay. I don't think we're getting more votes than what we have now. So I'll close the poll, share the results with you. So as you can see, about 60% of the people listening in are using Power BI Premium at the moment.
Okay.
Do you want me to put on the next one as well?
Yes.
Here we go. Who here is an administrator for Power BI Premium? Yeah, the results will baffle you, especially number 5. Okay, with that, we'll shut it down as well. Right down the middle.
Wow. Okay.
We do have a couple of Power BI Premium administrators here.
Okay. Well, this webinar will be very specific to Power BI administrators, so you should definitely get a lot out of this. And if you're using Premium, then this will allow for you to understand what you're using and how to better use the Premium licensing. So as a disclaimer, for starters, I do have a Yorkie, and whenever I'm doing a webinar, she whines, so just ignore her. All right, so I'll hop right into it. So who am I? My name is DeNisha Malone. I am a Power BI consultant and enterprise administrator. My social media hashtag is the Power BI Queen. I've been working with Power BI for about a little over 3 years. So since Power BI was in the beta version, I'm now consulting multiple enterprises that are using Premium or Pro, or anyone who's just interested in Power BI holistically. Below that, these are all of my speaking engagements that I've been to in 2018 and 2019. So as you see, I enjoy talking about Power BI and its features. Outside of my career, I do enjoy traveling and volunteering in the community. In the bottom right, I have a blog, so check out my blog. There's short videos of how-to on there. So, and if you need any help, definitely reach out to me. I'm always willing to help with Power BI. All right, what is Power BI Premium? Premium is all about the node. Nodes are used for embedded and service deployments. You have a P1, P2, and P3. In this demo, we'll just be talking about the Premium 1 node, which include 8 total cores. You have 4 back-end cores and 4 front-end cores. The front-end cores are related to the end-user experience, so report access rights, imports, exports, scheduling, things like that. The back-end cores are responsible for processing the query, data refreshing, server-side rendering, and a few other heavy actions. So the back-end cores are very important. They're most important. So that's where you want to focus most of your administration on. And so the back-end cores for P1 provide 25 gigabytes of RAM, which we'll go into a little more of how that affects you as we go through this webinar. You also, with Premium 1, have 6 parallel refreshes. So that means you can have 6 refreshes running at the same time in one refresh moment. And you also have 30 live connections per second. So this is regarding to direct query. With Premium, you do have some specific features. You can share it for users, create data flows, publish larger reports to the service. You can use the full embedded features. You have better service performance because you have your own dedicated capacity. You're not sharing resources with Microsoft Enterprise. And you can use the REST APIs for developers. And also the performance metric app, which is what this webinar is all about. You have that access to that app. Okay. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, you definitely can post those in the chat window, and Jen and I will be viewing those as appropriate. All right, so I want to first look at the capacity app that Microsoft gives you. This is the app. This is what you see when you open it. You download it, you open it. This is the home screen of it. And I'm not going to go over every metric in this app, but I do want to show you what some of the most important parts are and how you use those in the given app. I do want to say that this is a customized. I've customized. As you see, this is a presentation, so this is part of the customization of the app. So I did change out the dataset and workspace's name. I changed those to the IDs for privacy of the company. So first, I want to go to this refreshes table. Well, everything in this app is important. I do want to say that. So we'll only go over the most important ones. So don't think something in this app isn't as important, but everything's important. But the most important things in this refresh table, you have the total count. I'll enhance this a little bit. All right, so the total count is important here. This shows you how many times that data set is refreshing. If you have a refresh, like for instance, there's a data set here that's refreshing 36 times in the last 7 days. This app does only show data for the last 7 days. So that means in the last 7 days, this data set has refreshed 36 times, which is probably not reasonable. So depending on what that data set is and who owns it and who's viewing it, then that refresh can probably come down a few times from 36 to maybe 14 or 28 or something like that. So looking at that will show you how often that data set is refreshing, and maybe if you should go and speak to that user about workspace usage or who's actually using that data set for that data to be updating that amount of times. The next important column here is reliability. Reliability shows you how reliable that data set is to refresh. So 100% obviously is good. That means that the refresh never fails really. You can trust it to refresh fully as it should. Anything under 60% is a problem. That means that the refreshes are struggling a little bit, and maybe there's errors that's continuously happening in that data set. So often before I start to customize this app, I would go in here and show the reliability from descending to ascending, and anything that was 0, I automatically go look at that. This is a major problem here. 92 refreshes with no reliability means that that's just a completely dead data set. So that means that we need to look at that. The next column here that's important is the average duration. The average duration shows you how long this data set is taking to refresh. I think on average, a refresh that takes longer than 15 minutes is a problem. 20 minutes is probably pushing it, but 30 minutes and above is probably that you definitely should be looking into that. A refresh taking longer than 30 minutes means that there's some optimization that can happen. Some query optimization, more than likely, incremental refresh maybe to not have that long of a refresh time. So duration allows for those optimization practices to go into place. All right, the next thing here, let me go back to the report. On this tab specifically is this. This is my favorite visual of the entire app, actually, the hourly refresh count and memory consumption. This is a very important visual to see how your tenant is performing overall. So just immediately looking at this, I can see if there are any intense spikes in the yellow line. The yellow line shows me the memory consumption, and you really can't see the dataset memory limit line, but 25 gigabytes, as I mentioned at the start of this presentation, is the dataset limit. So Right now, my average is about 23.69, which is a lot better. We used to be like 24.9, so which is horrible because we always used to hit memory capacity. Um, so now we're averaging about 23. But if there are any spikes, like if anything were to like push up beyond this, or if these spikes here were like really high, then like for instance, I may go and check out this spike because that's a spike. Any spike is like a triangle tip. Then I would go and look into what's causing that spike and see if I can level things out there. And also the black versus the blue. Blue is success, black is failure. So right here, it seems like there's a lot of black here. So during April 7th, there was a outage, which explains a lot of this black. But this black isn't explainable right now. But on average, this isn't a bad view of the tenant because you're still getting a lot of successes and there are no extreme spikes in the memory. So technically, this tenant is performing relatively okay. There are two capacities here, and another thing to mention for this and two capacities, we have two P1 capacities. If there were ever a spike here, I do whatever data set's causing that spike, I remove it from this capacity to the next capacity. My second capacity is like my testing one where we fix reports and then we push them back to the main capacity. So that's just the practice that I do with this customer. If I go to the datasets tab, there's only one thing really on this tab that I look at. Everything's important, as I mentioned. Well, really two things on this tab. The first is the dataset sizes. So how big is my model? This does show megabytes, even though RAM, everything you see really on Microsoft documentation is gigabytes. But in this case, you can easily convert by dividing by 1,000. So here I've kind of in my head, I can tell how that converts to gigabytes. So it's easy for me to figure out what's happening there based on size and how it compares to the overall maximum of 25 gigabytes. So that table is important to know the data set sizes, but it's not so helpful because you have to switch back and forth. It doesn't really show everything together. So let's keep that in mind as we customize. Also on this datasets tab is the consumed memory percentage. This is important because when you're refreshing in a Power BI tenant, you have inactive versus active refreshes. And so you kind of want to keep in mind what refreshes are active, how many you have active versus inactive at any given time. So that's really hard to know just by looking at really anything else outside of it. You really can't know what's inactive versus active without looking at this matrix out. Microsoft doesn't make that super easy for you. But this view helps me a lot. So how I know if I'm in trouble using active versus inactive is that this dark shaded area, when it starts to align with this light shaded area, then that means that we're having a capacity issue. Right now, you still can see a gap between the light versus dark. So everything's good there. Once the dark completely takes over the bright, then that means that you're pretty much having lots of those active sessions everything's merging together. So you need more capacity pretty much. So any questions so far? Okay.
So far, I don't see anything yet. Not on Slack and not in here.
Okay, so that's good. That means that
maybe people are a bit afraid. It's the last hour of the day. It's late. But people, come on, ask them questions.
It's 8 a.m. for me, so I have all the answers to all your questions. Don't be afraid to ask me anything else, anything to do with premium. It doesn't have to be specific to what I'm talking about now. So post your questions and we'll get to them as we should. So I'm gonna hop right into the customized app that I created. All right, and I'm just gonna go through this slowly. And if you have questions, please post them. This is your time to shine and get any kind of premium resources you need. So this is my customized report that I use to monitor my the entire tenant. I also use a few other administrative reports. If we have more time, I like to show you guys how else I administer the tenant. But here's my prime space. So first is in the top left corner, I have the, for starters, node boils down, your premium node matters. Everything matters about the RAM and CPU is all that matters when it comes to premium. So how much CPU is being used, how much memory is being used. That's what matters most. That determines if you need more capacity, like that. That the money is in the node. So only thing I'm focusing on is the RAM and CPU, and from there, my environment can be optimized. So in the top left corner, I have the average data sets. This seems familiar to, where is it? This a little bit, but it combines the duration and the RAM. So this visual is a combination. Let me close this little view. Oh, don't leave the webinar. I just want to move it. Hold on one second. Okay. Let me open this. This visual shows on the x-axis, I have the average duration. So the starting of this visual pulls in the data set and the average duration of the top 5 data sets with the longest time by minutes. But I also added in a visual level filter here that shows me the top 5 data sets by size. So it's doing kind of like a dual filtering there. So it's showing the top 5 data sets by duration and RAM. So you can just kind of consolidate everything to those two metrics, which helps really show the top 5 bad performing data sets in your entire tenant. I actually do the top 10, but for this demo, I only show the top 5 to kind of give you guys just a really quick overview. But we have a really large tenant, so I always want to see the top 10 performing reports just to knock out those and get those practices together. Let me show you how I don't think it's here. Okay. Also, going to show you how I contact those users, but I don't think I have it on this PC. But once I pull out those data set names and how they're performing, I export this data into a table, and I put it inside of an Excel spreadsheet, and I put the data set name, the duration, the size of that report, who's ever the owner. So I do have, I've also created APIs to show me who owns what data set, and the optimization practice. So I look at the data set to see why it's running so long or why is it so large, to see what optimization practices do I recommend for that data set to run better in the service. And then I spend a week working with those users to optimize their reports and republish them to the service. And that's pretty much how that table helps me. Below that is this refresh table. As you remember, there was a table like this in the Given app, but I just customized it to make it easier for me to understand. I removed all of those columns that I deem not as important. And look at here, I included that size column that was in the datasets tab. I just added it onto this table so I can see everything in one view. If there's a size but no information here, that just means that that data set isn't scheduled to refresh. So there's no refresh data, but because the data set is in the service, you do have size information, which is still helpful to know the sizes of each workspace. Excuse me. I also did conditional formatting, which we all know conditional formatting helps with the eye. So when you have a table with lots of numbers, conditional formatting helps you see really quickly how things are performing. So what I did here was, let's go show you here. So an average duration, I didn't mean to make that smaller. I have conditional formatting for the background color to show me if the duration is greater than 30 minutes. Then give me a red. If it's between 15 and 30 minutes, then we should probably look at it eventually, or if it's coming up on bad. And if it's greater than 0, if it's anything less than 15 minutes, then we're in good cases there. And so that shows me how the duration is performing. And the size, I also did conditional formatting for the text colors just because you don't want two background colors. That just would have been a little confusing. So for the font color, I just did the lowest value. If anything's at 900, which is zero point 0.9 gigabytes, right at 1 gigabyte, then it should start turning yellow. And if it's anything bigger than 2 gigabytes, then that's a pretty large report, and you may want to check that out. And so that gives me my conditional formatting. As you see, if two things are red, then that's just a bad situation. That means that's taking a long time, and it's also pretty large. 6.5 is a 6.6. That's a pretty large report. Yeah, that's a pretty large report. So those are just those are just optimization. If I were to control click all of these values here, then that table should show me all red. It's running a little slowly. Yeah. I should go to reading view. Okay. All right, and you see the table below populating, and everything's red. There's a yellow there, but those are still really big sizes. But yellow is that still means that those are coming up on 30 minutes. So yeah, so that shows that these reports are definitely badly performing. I mean, you can see I can even use this to export instead of exporting this, and it gives me more information here. So so that's this refreshes table. After that, I have the average duration. So I want to go to these little cards here that I created. I did pull over the date range, the capacity, and the last refreshes. That obviously helps as a filter. But these cards I created, these are my alert cards. So I actually add these to a dashboard and create an alert based on these measures to alert me when things are happening. So the average duration, this is the entire tenant duration. So that means the entire tenant refreshes are about 11 minutes, which is good. That in that case, it will be green over here. So that's perfect. If this becomes higher than 15 minutes as a tenant average, then that is a problem. That means on average, if it becomes anything higher than 15 minutes, 20 minutes, extremely bad. But I would pin this to the dashboard. Don't have dashboard already here. Nope. And if I were to go to that dashboard, I now have this average duration here. I didn't mean to do that. I can set an alert here to say if just send me an alert whenever this average refresh duration is above 15 minutes, and then I'll get that alert whenever that happens. And so that's really helpful for me as an administrator. And also for the dataset consumption for RAM size, right now on average the entire tenant is using about 24 gigabytes of RAM, which if you remember we have 25 maximum. This 24.3 is, like I said, a lot better than where we were performing when I came into this customer. It was 24.98, which they kept running into capacity limits for memory throttling, and they didn't know why. And that was why they were on average using all of the memory. So bringing it down from 24.9 to 24.3 gives a little space for those reports to refresh. So everything's really running smoothly now, thankfully. But I still want to get that down to about 23. Then I'll feel a little comfortable. Out of memory error. This comes when this throttles. So if you have more, this 11 isn't a good number, but this 11 comes from mainly this problem we had at the beginning of 7 days ago. That I'm betting most of those errors come from that time period. But your out of memory errors just means that you're using a lot of RAM and you need to balance out your refreshes a bit more. If your out of memory error is above 20, then that's a huge problem. That means that you're running out of memory a lot and your refreshes are not balanced. or either you're pushing off refreshes at bad times and you're getting those errors that you don't need. Okay, right below that, we have the refresh activity by workspace ID. This is a completely new visual I created that shows me all the workspaces. So the x-axis, these are all my workspaces. And I just can see how each workspace is refreshing. And so the red is giving me a failure count. This is 38% of this refresh, of this workspace. Out of 100%, 38% is failing 38%. This workspace, I bet, is that report with 92 refreshes. Yep. So that there's this workspace is just horrible. It looks like everything else. It's just one report that's scheduled to refresh in that workspace. I actually know which workspace this is, and this one report is giving problems. So out of the refreshes, 100% of them are failing. So that visual is correct. And then you can just see how everything else is performing here. So that gives you a really quick look on workspaces and how that's happening. And to create this visual is really easy. You just pull in this stack column chart and you put your workspaces on the axis and you bring in your failure count and success count from the refresh metrics. I didn't really go over this here, but these are all of the pre-developed metrics that Microsoft gives you that are behind that capacity app. Everything's really straightforward. They did a really good job with naming everything here. So you can easily find whatever you're looking for and you can pull in those metrics. I did want to note that the system metrics here, these are all of their measures they created. They don't work too well when you're adding them to like visuals. So they work better in cards for some reason. But you can go through those and figure out what you're trying to analyze and pull that in. But there's a lot of really helpful fields there. And so that's how I create that chart. Down here is just my favorite visual. I pulled them, as I mentioned before, same thing, nothing changed here. But this is, to look at this compared to everything else is really good. So I can click on something and it filters the entire visual to show me things specific to that time frame and what was happening. So that's really helpful to have included with everything else here. And so this is how I, every month, at the end of the month, I do a monthly cleanup, and this is how I do that cleanup by using this screen. Before I hop into any questions, I want to show you guys how, kind of from the beginning, how I pull in this report. So if I open up my workspace, let's see. And what I will do is just go to get data. And down here, you see the service content packs. I will click that. And I'll just search for the premium pack. And here is just like the app that you see when you download. You can click get it now. And then it starts to download your premium metrics app. It takes a minute because there's a lot of data that is pulling in. So we certainly won't see it load during this meeting. But once you download it, it does take a minute to load all of the information. But once you get it loaded, what you will see is pretty much here it's pulling in now. So it gives you exactly what you would see in the app, but it's able to edit. So I don't know which one of these I just downloaded. Okay, probably this one. Yeah, so you see what you have. Usually right now it says it can't display because it's loading everything. So it does take a minute for everything to load. So don't expect it to happen immediately. But you see edit report is now here. So now you can edit and change things around as you would want to. And you're also able to create your own dashboard. It's really your own report now. The only thing you can't do with this report is download it. You can't download it as a PBIX file and change the relationships or do any kind of transformations. Like you can't do anything you can't do in a service. So that is a downfall, but the fact that we can edit it, I think as an admin, that works. I'm completely satisfied with that. So, so yes, that's how that happens. Before I go into questions, I have a little bit more time, so I want to show you guys how I go from this report to a few more a few more administrative tips, just because I think there's not as many of us admins out there. So all the tips are great tips. So I have, and I'm going to show you this quickly because I didn't anonymize this report. But so when using your parallel refreshes, as at the beginning of this webinar, I mentioned that when using a P1 node, you have 6 parallel refreshes, and each during that 6 parallel refreshes, your gigabytes have to be under 25 for you not to run into any throttling errors. And that's really hard to manage without the resources to see what refreshes are happening at what time and the sizes of those refreshes. So what I did was create a report that shows me the hour of the refreshes and the sizes and what's happening at that time. And if you're interested in knowing how I did this, just contact me through my blog or email. But here I can see any set date. This is pulling in from the Premium Metrics app. It's pulling in the RAM size, so I'm only able to see the past 7 days. But in the past 7 days, I can see at 9 a.m. I have these reports. There's a lot of reports scheduled at 9 a.m. Way more than 6. But if you're really understanding about premium, you know that once the 6, if you're using a lot less than 25 gigabytes in your 6 parallel refreshes, then if those reports finish, then Power BI goes to the next report. So right now, this isn't a bad. This is way less than 25 gigabytes. So all of these reports complete, even though it's way more than 6. I just align these really well for really small reports to get all of these out at 9 a.m. But I wouldn't put any more reports here. So if someone requests for a 9 a.m. report, I try to get them at maybe 9:30. There seems to not be really many. I should have had the schedule thing here. Or 10. 10 seems to be really light. And so this view just shows me the scheduled reports that are together, and this is a really light space. And you see I did convert those megabytes to gigabytes, and I also created a percent used. So this is compared to 25 gigabytes. So out of 25 gigabytes available, what percentage is this data set using? So that this is a really good overview of what's happening in a tenant, and allows me to schedule those parallel refreshes as they should be and put them where they fit so we don't throttle. Okay. So from there, I can take questions. Any questions, comments?
Yes, a ton of good questions even.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So first off, Alex is looking at doing a P1 sandbox and 2 P3s, two P3s global enterprise. Okay. As kind of a first scale out post proof of concept. So what are some of the things that you look for in your audit? Because they are looking at VertiPack Analyzer and they are using Power BI Sentinel for metadata extraction and also for the linked entities of data flows across premium spaces to share dimensionality across the organization to manage the refreshes. So this was like halfway your presentation. You said something about this. So what do you personally look for when you're auditing those things?
Well, this customer in particular, they don't use any kind of their data flow. Their data flow usage is minimum, so I don't have to look at the link entities across workspaces like that. But if I were to deal with a customer that had data flows and entities, then I would just look at the size. Same, because P1, you have to remember P1 is still node. Well, the nodes are still CPU and RAM, so you just want to look at the memory and the processing power that's being used behind. So everything boils down to that, regardless of the premium node that you're using. You still just want to look at RAM, memory and CPU of the data flow, memory and CPU of the paginated report. Everything else falls on those two legs. So start there, and then if there's a problem, if there's a data flow with lots of memory, or If it's using lots of CPU, then it's using your premium resources that your money goes to those two. So I hope that answered your question, Alex.
I hope so. Here you had another question. Knowing the limited 7-day window, what insights are you personally extracting from the APIs to look at historical trends? Or do you primarily monitor the current performances?
Mm-hmm. No, so well, yes and no. I do extract from the APIs. I extract refresh history, and let's see, yeah, the refresh history, the refresh schedule, and from there, that's how I see parallel refreshes. That helps me monitor refreshes and how they're performing in regards to what's there. So that last report that I kind of briefly show you all about what's refreshing at what time and what order, so the RAM of those refreshes, that comes from an API that pulls out the refresh history, the refresh schedule from each data set, and that shows me more than 7 days. Even though the memory is only at a 7 day lag, but if the size of that data set is likely not going to change within a few weeks unless a user publishes a new one. And if they publish a new one, then that capacity app catches it. So really, that report doesn't really show wrong data. But that's the only way that I pull in anything more than 7 days is the refresh history, which does allow for that parallelism. But for the RAM and CPU, that has to be that is at a 7 day usage, which for me is okay because if you're refreshing in 7 days, if a report refreshes 14 times in 7 days and whatever CPU is showing, then that's the performance. That's the performance of the report in the past 28 days. Like it hasn't changed. I'm pretty sure they haven't published a new one, so it does help, even though it's 7 days. Yes.
Okay, so are you always looking for something special in terms of increased consumption of models? Or are you pulling some data down to audit it and suggest Microsoft's best practices with new features released? For example, using data flows? Or are you only
Yeah.
looking at CPU and RAM?
Nope. So it depends on the customer. Let me say that first. So like I said, this customer isn't. I like data flows, just especially if you're using the same data set across workspaces.
Yeah.
Then data flows, even though initially you couldn't use one data flow in a separate workspace, but now they're making it better. So data flows are one of my optimization practices for not this customer, but for others who are using data flows. So it depends on the customer. But when I do this cleanup, I do. So this customer that I'm presenting, I'm very well, like they're a tenant. I know like the back of my hand. So if there's a report that's performing badly, all I really need to know is the source, and usually I'll know if that user had a query or not. But if I'm not familiar with that data set or that report, then I would download the PBIX file just to save time of reaching out to the user and having them download and do a screen share and all that. I download the file and I see what's happening. I don't do any changes to the report, but I see how the user developed it. So if they included a query that's very long, and then I would copy that query out and send it to the BI team for them to optimize it or create a view. Sometimes we just need to have a view on a database, so the query not in the Power BI report at all. Or if they're directly hitting the server without any transformations, that just means they need to do a direct query. So I tell them to do a direct query, or sometimes they just need to do an incremental refresh, and I walk those users to how to do that. So yeah, I would download the report or just reach out to them directly and tell them the optimization practice that I recommend.
Okay, so you also do look at those bad data models, basically.
Yeah.
It's still a major concern, like always. Yeah.
Yes, because people do the Power BI being self-service. I'm pretty sure all you admins are not surprised about how many bad models come along.
Oh, and this was even the case before Power BI, so
True.
it's pretty normal.
Yeah.
Um, Rishi had a question. Do you need to be a tenant admin in order to get access to the dataset behind the capacity metrics report?
Yes, you have to be listed as a capacity admin. So a tenant admin, capacity admin. I believe if you're a tenant admin, then you should be a capacity admin, vice versa. But let me show you, just in case you don't know what I mean here. So in your admin portal, let it load a little bit. Okay. Actually not. So I'm usually logged into the service account, but I'm actually logged into my personal account. But once you log into the admin portal, you'll see all the admin settings here. It's not okay, there it is. And because I'm a capacity, because my personal account with this customer is the capacity admin, then I can see the capacity settings. You see my name here. This service account is usually what I'm logged in under, and you can see all of the admin settings. But the service account gave me permission to be a capacity admin, and with being a capacity admin allows for me to see that capacity app.
Okay. So can you also see that app without being a tenant or a capacity admin? Because
No,
Rishi,
go ahead.
yeah, Rishi currently sees the application as his customer, but he doesn't think he has access to the dataset behind it. Is it possible? Is there something else going on?
So if you're able to see the app, then you're able to do the get. You're able to do what I just did as a get data and then pull that in. So if you're seeing the app, then you can't. You're probably seeing it this way, and there's no way for you to see. You can do a analyze with in an Excel, but that's certainly not. I wouldn't suggest doing that with this app just because the metrics don't really. It's kind of fishy how they got it set up. But this is what you're seeing. But what you want, if you can see this, then that means that you have administrative resources. You can see this data. So you can go to a workspace and create a new workspace. I would suggest creating an admin workspace. So maybe you can include other people. You can do it to your workspace, but you may want to share this report later. So create an administrative workspace, and then you're able to get data and do this service content pack way. If you're able to access the app, then you can access this service content pack, and then you can see the data behind it. But that's the only way for you to see the data behind it is if you get it as a content pack.
Okay. So Alex had a nice summary of the how licensing goes together with the administration skills that you or the administration features that you get. He says as a service admin, you can control features. As a capacity admin, you can do premium monitoring. As an Office 365 admin, you can assign PBI licenses, and that's about it, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can also see, as an office admin, for you, if any of you are office admins, you can also see the auditing. So that you can get those auditing metrics to see how users are performing. Our users are interacting with your tenant, which is super helpful. I did create an API to pull in the Azure, those auditing metrics to see how users are performing too.
Yeah, but I suppose before you ask for Office 365 admin, you just ask for those few audit log only via permissions.
Yeah.
That's usually the way it goes.
Mm-hmm.
Melissa asks, this is a question for you directly. So the specs for a P1 are pretty small given the cost. And what's your experience with how effective a small P1 is? So granted, the workload does matter, but Melissa's curious about your experience and what you can really get from a P1.
Yeah, so as you see, we have two P1s. And honestly, the second P1 was just, right now we're really using it as a kind of like a healing capacity. So we put reports there, and this customer can, apparently they can afford a second P1, but that we don't really use. But we put reports there that are performing badly, so it doesn't affect any other reports in the primary capacity area. But P1, it depends on your tenant. So if you have lots of, for starters, if you are just getting premium and you're going to turn that premium on, then you want to make sure that you begin your premium administration with good governance. Like you don't want to just throw lots of reports, lots of workspaces in premium just because they want to share it for users. You want to make sure that before you turn that premium on for the workspace, you know what data sets are in there, the sizes, understand when they're scheduled to refresh. Because once you get a P1 and you turn on 15 premium workspaces, you have all of them refreshing, you're going to start to run into capacity problems just because you never manage, you never align things, or you don't really understand what's happening behind it. So I think a P1 is definitely, if you're managing it right, like if you start off creating this customized workspace, this customized report, knowing when the reports are, you align your parallel refreshes, you know the sizes of your models, you make sure that you put in practices that before a developer publishes a report, then they go by these steps to make sure their reports are optimized. If you do those things, then a P1 can take you a really long way. If I came into this customer before they initiated their original P1, then they wouldn't have to have a P2. They wouldn't have to have an additional P1 because right now we're just trying to fix their environment. But a P1 can definitely take you a long way. Microsoft wouldn't tell you that, so don't expect it. They tell, if you run out of capacity, they just tell you to buy another one. They don't tell you to optimize or anything like that. But P1 can definitely take you a long way if you were to optimize your service.
Okay, cool. That's great to know, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So Rishi asks, what drives the CPU usage on a premium server? Is it evaluating DAX measures, or is it all visual, and is all visual rendering done locally on users' machines? So premium doesn't help at all with that part.
Yes.
So what drives the CPU usage?
So CPU, as mentioned, CPU, the backend cores, the four backend cores are directly related to the CPU. CPU is consumed by query processing, yes, data refreshing, any kind of server-side rendering, anything that moves the data and gets it to refresh. That's using CPU. So that's why query optimization, incremental refresh, direct query, those things are optimization practices to better serve in the CPU usage.
Okay. That's it. Yeah.
Great.
You're free to go if you want. Or you're the last session of the day. If you really want, you can keep presenting for as long as you want.
Well, I just want to tell you all to definitely subscribe to my blog. I do post really short videos, how-to videos. When you've been a Power BI person, there's just so much to know. So if you want to learn something specifically, especially for your premium users, I really don't. There's only a few blogs there for premium users. So if you want to know something more or how to do something as a premium user, please let me know. Just send me a message through my blog, or yeah, if you send me a message to my blog, I'll definitely reach it, or even through Twitter, so I can get those resources out to you all. Because, like I said, there isn't as many of us admin users. As being a consultant, I realized that there's just not admin Power BI users. So it would help if you let me know what you need. I think that's really much it for me. Thank you all for watching, and your questions were amazing. Thank you, Jan, for having me.
Okay, thank you. There's a last question. Rishi just shot it in, if you don't mind.
No problem.
Are service content packs being deprecated in favor of template apps?
Are they being, say that again?
Are service content packs being deprecated in favor of template apps?
I'm not sure. So service content packs, I really don't really use them except for these kind of cases. So if I find like this was like a prime, man, when I found this out, I was just beyond shook. But no, I don't really use either of those. So I can't really answer that question.
Okay, well, Alex just replied, yes, service content packs are dead, capital letters, no apps.
There you go. Thanks,
Okay.
Alex.
Catherine says thank you, and same for me. Thank you very much for wanting to do this. I really appreciate it. There's a lot of other thank yous coming in. So
Yes,
I wish you a good day, good evening. It's morning, right? Almost.
it's 8 a.m.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank
Okay.
you. You guys follow me on Twitter.
I do. So everybody else, go follow DeNisha as well.
Yes,
She's
please
awesome
do.
to follow.
Try to be. Thank you all.
Okay.
Bye, Jen.
Bye.